I read 8 books in January, but one of them was over 1,000 pages. So stay tuned to see which one of those that I read. Hey my fellow weirdos, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name's Anna, I read all types of horror. If that's your thing, be sure to subscribe. Now let's just get into the video. I read 8 books in January and let's go through them. Let's hear my thoughts on them. So one of them is a very famous book that I've not read yet, and I'm kind of ashamed to say that I've not read it, considering that I'm a horror fan. And I have reference to one of the author's books in my logo, hint hint. So we're going to talk about that, but let's talk about some of the other books first. So as I mentioned, I read all types of horror. The first book is an extreme horror, and that is Stab Rabbit by Sher McKenzie. This is an author's take on like Looney Tunes but extreme horror. Now, when I first saw this, I was like, yes, I need this. Because obviously the cover is very similar to the style of Looney Tunes. And I was just like, you know what, this is going to be a fun time. And it did not disappoint. It was exactly how you would picture it to be. Essentially, we have 2 siblings and they summon one of their favourite characters out of the TV and bring it into the real world. Now this character is called, obviously it's not any reference to Looney Tunes, like the names and that, because I think obviously copyright and stuff like that. So the character itself is Harry Hare. And yeah, so Harry Hare comes out of the TV into reality, and poor Harry Hare, that's all you can say. I mean, it's a bit obvious from the photo, he gets a bit beaten up. And then the brothers as well cause a bit of mischief. You've got one brother which is a little bit of a shit. So they go around causing a bit more mischief. This bunny gets a bit injured. And you'll have to read the book to see what else happens. But it's only a short book, this. It's like you can read this in 45 minutes to an hour. This is just a fun time. If you're after something where you don't really have to think, and you just know you're going to have a laugh, you just want some fun horror, then I highly recommend this. I've not read anything else by this author, but I am inclined to pick some more of his work up now after reading this one. So that is good. It's a good score from me. I forgot what I rated this. I think I rated it like 3.75. I need to stop being so specific with my ratings, guys, because I just forget them. But yeah, anyway, this one, recommend. The next book that I read, let's talk about this one briefly. I know I recently did a video on this, so I don't really want to talk about it too much, because you can hear my thoughts in the video that I did. 5 fast-paced reads, if you want to go and check that one out. So that is Coffin Moon by Rosson. This author hasn't done too many books. He's written a duology, Fever House duology, which I haven't read, but I really want to read. This one is Vampire's Revenge, set in the 70s. Like I say, it's a fast-paced read. I read this in a day and a half, and I couldn't put it down. If you're just wanting something that's action-packed, then I definitely recommend this. And like the setting as well, it's like a crime sort of noir. And it's just great. The characters in this, I love the characters, and it was just kind of like a bit of a heart-wrenching read in a way as well. Like you've got elements of family and grief in this. This, yeah, like the cover, gorgeous. This author has, I think, been quoted by Stephen King, or if he's not being quoted by Stephen King on this, I feel like he might have, Stephen King might have quoted his other duology, Fever House duology. But yeah, this is very much like a King book in a way. It is a bit shorter than some of King's books. But yeah, definitely recommend this if you like any of the elements that I've just described. check it out. The next book that I read was, okay, so let's talk about a couple of arcs that I read this month. So one of the arcs that I read was Odessa by Gabrielle Sher. Now, this is a debut. I loved this. I think I rated this like 4.25 stars. This, honestly, again, I didn't want to put it down. It's a historical gothic, you've got like Jewish folklore in there. It's set in the early 1900s and it covers, it's near Russia, I think it's set. And it's the height of the pogroms, sorry. So essentially it's when a lot of Jewish people were being targeted and unalived. Don't know if I can say the other word on YouTube, sorry. I know that's, I've literally been swearing, so I probably can. Fuck it, let's do it. So they're being killed by other groups of people. I forgot what the other groups of people are called. But yeah, we've got a family, essentially, that are the key to sort of fighting back. So it's like I say, it's part historical and part folklore. So I think the two elements blend together very well. So you've got like historical fact. It's almost like a reimagined sort of history. It's sort of like a reimagined history, really. So obviously that happened in history, but then the author has added some folklore elements. I don't really want to go into too much detail about what this is about because I think it's another one of those books where it says too much in the blurb and it really annoys me that. And this is why I tend to not read blurbs anymore. But for arcs, I kind of have to in a way because I need to know what the book's about. So it's kind of like Sod's Law in a way. So I wouldn't recommend reading the blurb of this book because I think that you don't need to know what it states on the back. So that's just my recommendation. Read it if you want. I mean, I'm not telling you what to do, but if you are interested in this book, I think it would just be, you'd get more benefits from not reading the blurb, let's just say. So yeah, we've got this family that live in the shtetl, and you've got the father, the mother, and then a daughter and a son. And you switch like POVs between the daughter, the father, and the mother. So yeah, something essentially happens to the daughter and she becomes like a key part of the Jewish people taking back and fighting back. Some elements of this were just written so atmospherically and so beautifully, like the way they described the way the author described the elements and the land and how they connect to the body. Oh my god, it was so beautiful. Like some of you could get some really good quotes from this. I think the way that Jette in particular, I love Jette's character, that was the daughter. For people, especially for people that struggle with sort of academic and historical texts in general, I do think it's a good way to explore stuff that's actually happened and bring to light stuff that has happened. Yeah, I'd highly recommend this book. It comes out in April and it was sent to me by Mulholland Books. And yeah, I don't know if I mentioned this, but it's the author's debut. So I highly recommend this. I think the author actually did a PhD in creative writing. Yeah, that kind of, it shows in this book. And the cover, absolutely stunning. I might actually have to do a separate review on this, guys. Let me know if you want that, but yeah, definitely recommend, keep your eye on this one. The next arc that I read was Nowhere Burning by Catriona Ward. Okay, disclaimer, I didn't love this book. I actually rated it, I think, a 2-star, which seems a bit tight, but let me explain. So this is my first book by the author, So I don't have any sort of knowledge of her previous books and what they're like. I thought this was kind of described as a literary horror. So it's set in the Rocky Mountains, and it's about a place called Nowhere. I think it's called Nowhere. Yeah, I think kids are going missing. And it's saying it's a thriller, but with horror elements. I definitely would be more inclined to class this as a mystery thriller. There's a lot of, I think it's quite slow, and it's a bit slow and it's a bit atmospheric. I think that's the reason why I didn't really get on with this book, because it was a little bit slow in places. And the writing style was quite, it wasn't getting to the point, like it was quite descriptive, and it was kind of like giving the reader like Easter eggs in certain ways, but I just weren't picking up on that. The characters themselves, there's a lot of characters, and I wasn't really invested in any of them. I don't think I wouldn't recommend this book. I think if you are into like mysteries in particular, then maybe give this a go. But yeah, I wasn't that bothered by it, if I'm being honest. I thought there were going to be more horror elements to it. There was like one sort of scene that I remember where there was quite a lot of horror in it. But a lot of the times it was just very highly descriptive writing, and like you're following these characters, and I just felt like nothing was happening, and like you weren't getting any sort of inkling to what was happening until you got to a certain point of the book, and then it rushed to explain it. And this is one of the gripes I have with thrillers, and maybe I'm just a thriller hater, because I am a bit fussy when it comes to thrillers, guys. I think a lot of the time, even if I enjoy a lot of the book, which this one I didn't, I'm sorry, but like even if I enjoy like 80% of the book, I get to the end a lot of the time and I just feel deflated and disappointed. The ending for this was, I thought I was going to get a good payoff towards the end, and I just didn't. It was something that was quite predictable for me, and just in general, I felt like it was quite a predictable ending and nothing that we've not seen before, and I just didn't really get on with it. It wasn't for me. But that's okay, you can't have them all. This comes out in February, by the way, guys, and if you are into a mystery sort of thriller and you are familiar with Catriona Ward's work, you might like this. I've heard that she's quite divisive with her writing style. It is quite riddly and over descriptive in places, so yeah, unfortunately just not for me. The next arc that I read, I got sent a digital copy by the author themselves, and this is Full Body Dismemberment by James Oliver. This is a extreme horror love story. I wasn't sure what to expect when going into this book, but it was a fun time, trust me. It was so ridiculous in places. He's essentially got some hillbillies going around killing people, and just the wording in this book, the characters themselves were ridiculous, just like the stuff they were up to, and the way that they killed people. There's some imaginative scenes in this. It doesn't take itself too seriously, and it is a bit ridiculous, but it's definitely my type of read, and I had such a fun time with this book. I have read another book by this author as well. I think it's called My Hands Are Tied. I'll leave a picture of the cover, and I loved that one as well, and that was like more of a serious book. But again, it's like extreme horror, so you do have naturally some, I'd say, unrealistic and ridiculous elements to extreme horror in general. But yeah, that was more of a serious book than this one. And I think the author himself like says in the beginning, this is a ridiculous book, but it actually is. But it is if you're after just a fun time when reading, and you have read Extreme before, then I would recommend this book. In terms of plot, I think that's all I've got to say about this. I rated it 3.5, and yeah, I definitely recommend it. The next book I read was, okay, so I read the prequel slash sequel to Rabbit Hunt by Rath James White, and that book, it was Emily. If you haven't read Rabbit Hunt, oh my god, guys, it is one of the most extreme books I've ever read. So pre-warning. Yeah, this book doesn't hold back as well. Emily. So essentially, Emily is a character in Rabbit Hunt that appears at the end of the book. And we kind of we meet Emily for the first time in Rabbit Hunt, and Rath decided to write a full book about Emily. And she's psychotic, let's just say that. There was some folk elements to this book, which I thought blended really well with the extreme horror. And Rath James White has not written a bad book, in my opinion. He can just write extreme horror, and it's entertaining throughout. Essentially, Emily gets caught by the police at some point, and you are learning about Emily through another character, a trans woman, and she is reciting to the police all her adventures with Emily and how they met and her history. And she was introduced to Emily's father, and Emily's father is crazy. In terms of plot, there's not like too much. This is a fairly short book. Basically, Emily and her father just go around kidnapping people and torturing them, but they have a reason for that. And I don't really want to get into too much to the plot, because I think it'll ruin it. But yeah, if you have read Rabbit Hunt, you don't need to read Rabbit Hunt to read this book, I will say, but it just gives it, just sort of get that more context if you have read Rabbit Hunt. But I would highly recommend both of those books, but with a major content warning for both of them. Only seasoned extreme horror readers would be able to read these books. If you haven't read extreme horror, then I would not recommend going into this book as your first extreme horror. That would be pretty brutal. Unless you just like jumping into the deep end with stuff, then go for it by all means. But yeah, I will always recommend Rath James White's books, and he's one of the authors that I need to read more of his backlog this year, because he has written some exceptional books. This one, not so much. In fact, yeah, he always has sort of like social commentary and bigger issues in his books. They're all ingrained with like police brutality, race, issues of gender. So Emily, you have gender issues in that, and like police brutality is Rabbit Hunt, and race is Rabbit Hunt. You have, I think there's like loads more that he deals with in his books, and I think that's why I like them, because a lot of the time, so you have a lot of the time I like a sort of a transgressive read, a read that pushes boundaries, but also it actually means something and it's got a bigger issue, and that is definitely his books, and that is why I like them so much. Anyway, moving on to the next book that I read, slightly disappointing in a way. That was Jennette Mcurdy's new book, her actual fiction debut, Half His Age. Now, I've read her autobiography when that came out, and I absolutely loved it. I think I rated it very highly. There's no doubt that Jennette Mcurdy has got an excellent writing ability. She's able to make sentences flow so easily, and with humour and sarcasm and wit. However, right, so I did enjoy Half His Age. It's sort of like, the premise is sort of it's a sort of Lolita, My Dark Vanessa style book. So you've got a young woman that ends up dating and having a relationship with her professor, who is 20 years her senior. So we've got this weird relationship dynamic. However, it does kind of flip a little bit, because usually in these sorts of relationships, it's the guy that's possessing all the power, or the older person in the situation. And this one is slightly different in the sense that it twists that a little bit, because you've got a young woman that is just ruthless and knows what she wants. There is parts of this book that I really think were good, and the way they tackled, just the way she tackled being in a young person's mind in general, because she's flawed. The main character is flawed. She's not a nice person, but I think we can all relate to that. When we're young, we do things that are very selfish and without much thought or care for another person. And it's just brutal in that sense. It's like a real raw sort of account of what it's like to be young. And I think that is dealt with extremely well. What I didn't think was the best was just, I think it could have been a little bit more than what it was. It was quite a short book, to be fair. I don't know the page count, but I think it was probably like 200 pages or something like that. Maybe not even that, because it didn't take me long. I listened to the audiobook, so I'm just trying to figure out. I think it was like a 6-hour audiobook, which Jennette Mcurdy narrated herself, by the way, and she obviously is great at narrating. I just think it could have been a bit more thought-provoking in certain aspects. I think it started off better than the end. I think the ending wasn't as good. I think it could have gone a little bit more further and pushed boundaries a bit more, and we could have gotten to know certain characters a bit better. I think for me, it just felt very surface level in some aspects. And I know that's going to sound weird, because it is naturally covering quite a heavy topic, and it does give some great insights into that topic. But yeah, I couldn't help but feel that we didn't really get much from the ending. And I think it just ended a little bit abruptly as well. I think I would recommend it if you've not read this type of book before. It's very easy to get through, but yeah, for some reason I was just wanting a little bit more, and I think there was potential for more in the plot. But yeah, I would still recommend. I rated it 3 stars, so yeah, it wasn't a terrible read. And Jennette Mcurdy has got such a talent with writing. I think it was just the plot maybe needed to be thought about a little bit more. I feel like it could have pushed boundaries a little bit more. But yeah, I will pick up any book that Jennette Mcurdy writes. I think she has such a talent, and her writing is quite accessible as well. I think she's mentioned quite a lot in interviews that she is not for flowery prose. She just wants to get straight to the point. So let's get on to the 1,000-page chonker that I read in January, which I am so shocked that I finally read it, and that is Stephen King's It. I am honestly so gassed with myself that I've managed to read this. I honestly feel like I've ticked something off of my bucket list. Like, come on, look how thick this bad boy is. Honestly. I mean, I don't think I really need to get into the plot with this, do I? I mean, obviously everybody knows what Stephen King is. Well, everyone knows pretty much a lot of Stephen King's books. I loved this. I loved it. Is it up there with one of my favourite King books? Yeah, definitely. I think it is. Not to say this book is without its problems, because the language is framed towards people of colour and women especially is problematic. And there is a scene, okay, the famous scene that everybody loves to talk about towards the end, that I'm not going to speak about it on here, because in case you haven't read it and you want to read it. But I just didn't get that bit, guys. I'm not gonna lie. I don't think it was relevant to the, like, it was relevant in a sense, but it could have been done differently. And I still don't understand why Stephen King wrote that. Like, does anyone know why he wrote it like that? Has he ever explained that? That'd be quite interesting to hear his thoughts on. It's not something that I've ever hear him talk about, that particular scene, because if I'm being honest, guys, I was under the impression that something happened. Everyone's always talked about this famous scene at the end, and I've never known what it was until I read it. And I was under the impression that it was something else. When I read it, I was like, oh crap, this is not what I was expecting. This is probably worse in a way, because this is like random and weird. So yeah, I didn't love that bit. I'm sure no one loved that bit. If you have no idea what I'm on about, you're going to be like, Anna, what the fuck are you talking about here? But yeah, I don't think that bit was necessary. What I loved about this book, let's just go into that, is no doubtably it's epic. It's like, it's its own world, but for horror. Like, it's not like set out like a fantasy book, but it almost is in a way. Like, obviously you've got the town of Derry and all its lore, all its history, and then you've got the losers, the loser club, the group of kids. I think honestly they are probably the best characters that I've ever read, and I think that's because they're just so relatable. It's the characters for me which definitely makes this book. Although that's not to say that the clown, Pennywise and Derry are all not amazing elements to this book as well, but the kids are what makes this book amazing, because I think they're so relatable. Like, I think everyone's been part of the loser club at some point. I mean, I'm still in it, so but yeah, you just honestly really relate to these characters. I think that's why this book is so well loved, because everyone feels like they've got a little bit of themselves in one of the characters. Like, I just think if you've not read this yet, you need to. You definitely need to. Obviously, take into account what I've said with certain elements. Like, obviously, it's a book of its time as well, like, it's been a while ago. And surprisingly, what I will say about this book is the Pennywise isn't like the main character like I thought he was. Like, obviously when you watch the films, and especially the series Welcome to Derry, amazing by the way, has anyone seen it? Because I am obsessed with it. Pennywise is featured in it quite a lot and is sort of like the main character in a way. Whereas in the book, it's definitely all about the kids, I think. Like, the kids are the main characters. And Pennywise doesn't feature in the book, like, as much as I was expecting. Because he is, like, is it a shapeshifter? Well, anyway, he, like, turns into, like, loads of different things in this book as well. Like, he's itself throughout the entire book. You've got some sort of lore with a turtle. You have a lot of mentions of Paul Bunyan, which was a bit strange in certain parts, but yeah, I loved it. And to say that it's this many pages, like, I'm not going to tell you that it didn't take me a long time to read this book, because I finished it maybe like a week ago, so it did take me a fair while to read it. But yeah, I loved it. It's not often that I read books this long. You can probably tell, because I'm like obsessed with how long this book is. I'm shocked that I've read it. Shocked. If you want me to do a video on like what Stephen King books I've read, or what Stephen King books I want to read, like, obviously I want to read them all, but ones upcoming this year, let me know, because I think my next book that I will be reading by him is The Stand, because one, that's another long book, so I just want to tick off all the long books first. Obviously it's an epic book as well. And two, I recently bought the anthology where a lot of authors contributed to that, and that they're all stories based around The Stand. So I want to read that this year as well. So I want to read The Stand, and then I want to read that. But there's too many books I want to read by Stephen King. I could talk about that all day. But yeah, let me know which book you think I should prioritise out of Stephen King's work. I'll let you know if I've read it or not. Yeah, I'm gassed, guys. I've read it. Yeah, so they are all the books that I read in January, 8 books, and to say that one of them was it, I am well happy with that. Let me know if you've read any of these and which one you will be reading in the comments. I will see you later, weirdos. Bye.